In 1846, a 6-year-old boy and his mother moved to New York to avoid the politics in Bavaria, Germany. The boy was Thomas Nast. He didn't know it then, but he would become the father of American cartoons, and his biggest fight would be against the Tweed Ring, a political machine that stole millions from the New York City taxpayers. Because Thomas Nast would feel the responsibility to expose the corruption of the Tweed Ring, he would use his right to free speech to draw cartoons that outraged the public, and with the help of the New York Times and Harper's Weekly, topple the Tweed Ring. William Tweed was born in New York to a middle-class family. He began dabbling in politics when he volunteered as a firefighter, where his amiability and great organizational skills helped him rise through the ranks until he was elected foreman of the America's Engine Company No. 6. But Tweed was ambitious and power-hungry, and running a fire engine company was not enough for him. In 1851, he was elected as alderman of the 7th Ward, and a year later to the United States House of Representatives. Upon his return, Tweed became active in Tammany Hall, the organization that ran the Democratic Party in New York, and became a protege of Fernando Wood, one of the most corrupt mayors in the history of New York City. Wood taught Tweed the art of graft, and 4 years later in 1858, after Tweed claimed the head seat at the New York Board of Supervisors, he started grafting too. Meanwhile, Nast was learning quickly and attended several art schools before finding work at Leslie's Illustrated News in 1856. At 15, Nast had his first job at a newspaper. 6 years later, he moved to Harper's Weekly, where he drew cartoons to accompany articles. His pictures consistently amused the public, and soon the Harper brothers noticed and allowed his cartoons to stand alone. When the Civil War began in 1861, Nast took his responsibility to report the news to the people seriously and created cartoons at a dizzying pace. The public found them both amusing and disturbing, and grew more and more transfixed by his pictures. General Grant would say about Nast, "He did as much as any one man to preserve the Union and bring the war to an end." While Nast was earning his reputation, Tweed was doing the same, but also working on getting more and more money. He even started wearing a diamond pin, which would become his signature characteristic in Nast's cartoons. Barely anyone suspected him of grafting and corruption, and his confidence and boldness grew. Little did he know, soon his great plans would be destroyed by the swift movement of Nast's pencil. The politics of New York City in the mid-19th century had changed drastically when the state legislature abolished the requirement to own property to vote in 1849. This, along with a large amount of European immigrants at the time, created a large pool of new voters. Tammany Hall took advantage of this new poor population, enlarging it by aiding new immigrants through the naturalization processes and then bribing them directly and indirectly by providing a social safety net and city-paid jobs. With these votes, Tammany Hall became an unstoppable political machine that in 1863 appointed its leader, William Boss Tweed. With the power to make or break careers, Boss Tweed began to fill key positions in the city government with people of his own choosing, and by 1870, the key actors of the Tweed Ring had taken the stage. The police service, the judicial system, the press, wealthy magnates, construction contractors, and even the mayor and state governor were all in the palm of Tweed's hand, thus making grafting much easier and far more efficient. Buildings were built at very inflated costs, and yet to poor standards so that more money needed to be spent on repairs. Equipment and supplies were purchased at very high prices, and contracts were awarded for work that had never been done at all.
The new people you hire for the city offices out there are going to be people that have helped get out the vote for your machine, and they're going to kick back part of their salary to you, and in return, they're able to get everything out of the office they want. So a whole bunch of them in there that went into office were known as the paint eaters. They were known as the paint eaters because basically they're so greedy it said they'd even need to paint off the walls of the offices they were in. I mean, they're really greedy. Yes.
At all levels, excess money was taken by the ring and their corruption hidden from the public by a complex accounting system, especially designed to cover up their fraud. Tweed was a charming man who maintained Tammany Hall's popularity with the voters by spending some of the ring's profits on the poor. He also gained their respect by keeping a cool head in panic times. For example, during the violent draft riots, while the rich were fleeing, Tweed remained calm and worked effectively to end them. While many loved Tweed, others were skeptical, including George Jones and Louis Jennings, the publisher and editor of the New York Times, the Harper brothers, and Thomas Nast. They suspected that the Tweed Ring was buying votes and felt a responsibility to use their First Amendment freedoms to reveal the corruption to the public. When rumors circulated that the ring was buying Roman Catholic and Irish votes, Nast readily believed them because of his prejudices against these groups. After Harper's Weekly realized that the New York Times was fighting against the Tweed Ring, they decided to join in. Nast started working harder. He had a captivating cartoonic style and was able to make characters look like they did in real life while bending their faces at will to reveal their inner motivations. His subtitles caused many feelings to rise in the hearts of the readers: amusement, shock, and anger. Many times, Nast quoted Tweed as saying, "What are you going to do about it?" as if to remind the public that they could do something about it.
The political cartoon's got a peculiar way of inciting really anger, I guess is the best word, embarrassment, and a number of emotions really among people. There's a reason that there were those riots worldwide over the Muhammad cartoons. People just react to them very viscerally. And it was true then and it's true now. But I'd say what we could learn the most from Nast is that when you turn that pen on local targets that are going to see it, you have a chance to have some impact.
Nast's cartoons reached everybody, even those who couldn't read, because everybody could see who he was talking about and understand what was going on. Because of their First Amendment right to free speech, the Tweed Ring could not use the law to stop the publishers.
There are many countries where you don't have this freedom, especially in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. And, there's a limit to what you can do. For example, the Syrian president, Assad, had his goons, go find one of our colleagues a couple years ago and beat the heck out of him and broke all his fingers. And, it's not even that rare, I'm sorry to say, for a cartoonist to be attacked and even killed. So compared to that, we have so little to worry about here.
And even though the Ring had bought off many newspaper companies, neither Harper's Weekly nor the New York Times would take their money. In an effort to shut down Nast's cartoons, the Ring withdrew the Harper's contract to print children's textbooks, which was a big moneymaker for them. The Harper brothers considered stopping, but eventually refused to because they felt a responsibility to help shut the Ring down. In the late summer of 1871, a man knocked on Nast's door and asked him about his plans to study art in Europe and told him, "I have reason to believe you can get $100,000 for your trip." Nast asked if he could have $500,000. The man agreed if Nast would drop this Tweed business and leave the country. To this, Nast smiled and said, "I made up my mind not too long ago to put some of those fellows behind bars, and I'm going to put them there." The man replied in a threatening tone, "Only be careful, Mr. Nast, that you don't put yourself in a coffin." Many people would have run from such a threat, but Nast took seriously his freedom to draw his cartoons and his responsibility to help the public understand the corruption. Shortly afterwards, the Tweed Ring fell apart. Following the Orange Riot of 1871, where Tammany Hall lost much of its credibility by being unable to control the Irish immigrants it supposedly ruled, Jimmy O'Brien, an ex-bookkeeper of the Ring, released evidence of their embezzlement to the New York Times. It showed that instead of stealing tens of thousands of dollars, they had taken millions. For example, a courthouse valued at $3 million took over $13 million to build, with the extra going straight into the pockets of the Ring. This confirmed what the public had been suspecting and what Nast had told them. New York City's debt went from about $36 million to over $97 million in a brief amount of time. Altogether, the Tweed Ring had stolen up to what would be $8 billion today. Tweed was arrested on December 16, 1871, and later convicted of 204 of the 220 charges against him. He was sentenced to 13 years in debtor's prison. When asked how many votes were bought, he remarked that it would take a man with a greater understanding of mathematics to calculate that number. Nast would not stop until Tweed was in jail, because he felt he had a responsibility to put him there. Tweed died in prison on April 12, 1878. With the help of Harper's Weekly and the New York Times, Thomas Nast used his right to free speech to draw an end to the Tweed Ring. Nast's cartoons were so effective, they caused Tweed to exclaim, "I don't care a straw for your newspaper articles. My constituents don't know how to read, but they can't help seeing them damned pictures."